Alright, so now that we're playing with the white pieces, we're going to start with knight f3. Again, not playing e4 first for the King's Indian attack. And again, there's just quite a few compelling arguments to be made that knight f3 is the more accurate move order. So we're going to stick with that. Just because then when we see, you know, e4, e5 positions, we don't really have to think about them. I think he's going for bishop h3. So do I go like h4 here? This is interesting. So they're trying to immediately get rid of my bishop. But I haven't really done anything to deserve this yet, have I? I want to go h3. Do I go h3 or h4 though? h3 means I can't castle yet, whereas h4 means I still could. h4 also means that if they play some sort of bishop h3, there's not like h5, h4. Like, one thing to worry about is castles, bishop h3, and they don't take immediately. What they do is they go h5, h4, and try to open up the h-file. Do we ignore it or not? It's a good question. Feels like a waste of time. Let's look at the development. Right? If we castle bishop h3, we go d3 in that position. They go h5, we go like e4. They might go d4 or something. Let's go h4. I don't know if this is necessarily needed. I'm kind of like allowing their play to... I'm allowing them to get away with the way that they're playing, which might not be the best idea. Because generally at this level, a lot of the plans that are played are a bit inefficient, and this plan does feel inefficient. But I've seen these types of attacks played against the King's Indian defense and blitz, and there's some compensation there with exchange sacrifices. So I am interested in avoiding those complications. So we'll just keep developing naturally. They might castle long. This sort of setup feels like they're intending to castle long. And if they do, oh, they don't castle long immediately. Now I'm interested in this e5 move intent means that I'm in. I feel like I should really consider castling now and allow bishop h3 because I think it has a little bit less going for it. Is that true? So if I castle and they go e4, that could be annoying. So c4 instead, trying to take out any power of e4. No. For some reason, I feel like I misplayed this. I think we should just go into the attack and just see what happens. And if they go e4, I think what I'll do is I'll actually play knight e1 immediately. Oh, but I shouldn't go knight e1 immediately. Because if I go knight e1 immediately, there's e3. Wow. Now is the perfect time for c4. Trying to break in the center. If they play e4, I think I can take. Because if they take, I can take on c6. Yes. So trying to complicate things with e4 doesn't work here for them. Because taking is such a big problem. And if they have to move their knight or something, then I also win e4. And or I take e4. And I think they're losing one of the pawns. Yeah, so I should have given this some more credit. Is h4 the right call then? Interesting. Interesting. It was something we definitely should have spent some time on. So I'm glad we did, though. Now I would like to take, but I also like knight g5. I kind of want to take and play bishop c4. I don't know where they're castling yet. That's kind of a big issue for me. Like, I want to play a3, b4 too, and try to, like, not threaten anything directly. It's not really threatening anything, is it? Huh. Yeah, so let's take on d5. Just make sure this knight is further away from g4 for attacking potential. I felt like they weren't gonna... Yeah, this looks like a mistake because I think we can take on c6, and the problem here is we're attacking their queen. So it's an intermezzo. Oh, they have queen h3, don't they? Wow. I almost blundered there. Wait, doesn't that still work? So if I take on c6, queen h3, and then I go knight h2, they have knight g4. Wow. D takes c6, queen h3, knight h2, knight g4. I gotta show that after, so I have to take, actually. That's really insane. Jeez, okay. Our opponent ain't no joke. I think I'm happier to see this move, though. Because I think we can get away with a move like e4 and try to keep the pawn that we just won. Or even something like e3 to kick the knight immediately, and we can recapture with the queen. Just to make it harder for them to recapture the pawn. We ultimately will probably give back the pawn, but I think it's important to note that, yeah, we can try to be annoying at least with queen takes f3. And do they want to... So they castle long, which makes me enticed to play e4 because the only way they can try to make some sort of weaknesses here is by playing c6, which weakens their king. So I think it's the call. I think we play e4 here because c6 is not really tempting now that the only way to open things up is, again, weakening their king. So now they're going for g5, but if they go g5... their knight hangs. Their knight hangs, which is important. So we'll just go knight to c4 in the meantime. So g5 is an immediate blunder because we can take on f6 and then go queen f5 in almost every variation to trade queens, which will get rid of any pressure against our king. So they're not really in time to play g5 yet. Yeah. Luckily, they did hang their knight. I was thinking, oh, g5 looks really scary, and how do I deal with it? Because I was thinking of h5, but again, their knight's hanging, right? You have to look at what your moves no longer do, as well as what they do. So yeah, queen takes f6 does win here, and yeah, I'm thinking of playing queen f5, just trying to go for a queen trade, even if it weakens the structure. I could also go here. Queen takes h4, which I'm gonna do this because I have queen h3. Yeah, so queen h3 gets a queen trade, but under better circumstances because our pawn structure isn't damaged. And our king is totally safe on h3. It looks a little funny, but it's totally safe. One maneuver I want to make is bringing the knight to f5 now. And again, c6 isn't something to worry about because we can just take it and it cripples their structure, even though it does open up the attack on our d3 pawn. This can sometimes be an idea. Like if black castled short instead, then it would have been more of a concept, but here it's not. And now we're getting our knight to f5. And now that we're getting it to f5, more problems ensue. If we take and they take with the h-pawn, do we go king g2 or king g4? Now it's time to decide. I like king g4 because it's a little bit more active, attacks g5, and if they defend it, we just go rook h1. And there's not really any tactics here with some sort of like rook h4, because we always have king f3 at least. So I'm going to go king g4. I'm going to be a bit aggressive with it. Because we're entering some sort of endgame. It's becoming more and more likely that it will be some sort of direct endgame here. So because of that, I want to play it like an ending, which is bringing the king up. Arguably, the king on g2 would have been better because it facilitates our winning of the h-file. Like right now, we can't threaten to take and then just play rook h1 because, well, unfortunately, nothing's defending the h1 square again. Like if our king was on g2, then we could take on h1 and play rook h1. So this is one drawback here. It's a very minor one though, I feel. Let's play knight e7. g6 is a threat. This forces exchanges of everything off the board, or winning an exchange. So what can happen here is knight g6, rook takes, and then rook to g8 to attack our knight. But then we go rook h8, and this forces the exchange of the rooks because there's a pin on this file. So a way to avoid that is playing king b7. But even still, we play knight g6 because they give up the h-file. And then they attack the knight, and we just go king f5 instead. So we still get a lot of activity, and this should be a winning amount of activity, actually. Plus, we're up a piece, so that also makes things nicer. Yeah, let's move up. Let's go knight g6. If they give up the file, that's okay. We have king f5 defending our knight. And there's not really a good way to attack it again. Like, if rook g8 going for... rook g7 going for rook g8, we still have this rook h8 move, which is key. Never really scared of any sacrifices because there's just not enough material for them on the side of the board to get anything tactical against us. But it is important to note that and to look out for potential tactics. So right now our threat is very simple. We just want to go rook h7 and the other rook to h1 and maybe try to bring everything on the 7th rank there. We could also go rook to c1 and rook to h7. There's a lot of ways to do it. I'm just keeping flexibility while still improving all my pieces. So this is what I mean. So right now they would be threatening rook to g8, but they're just not in time. So I can play rook h8. And rook takes g6 undefends my rook, but I can take with check first. So that's a problem. If they had rook g8 before, would have been something to consider, but yeah, here it's not really working out as they might want. Yeah, so I'm going to go here now. And if they go rook h2, I'm just going to go rook f1. A little passive, but the passivity doesn't matter when you're out this much material because these pawns are going to fall. Just because one of my pieces is passive doesn't mean the other two aren't really good. When we consider these two pieces, which ones were passive? And they, like, if you just compare the kings versus the kings and the rooks versus the rooks, it completely equalizes each other. Plus we're up a knight, right? So there's no comparison there, which is a bit of a problem for them. So let's go king g5. And then I'll take on e5 and g4. Or on g4, it doesn't really matter. And the pawns will start rolling. The more pawns we have, the easier it is to promote. And that's, again, also why you don't want to trade everything off, right? Like, if we traded all the pawns off in this type of position, we could imagine it getting to, like, a knight versus rook ending. And that would actually be bad for us, because that's a theoretical draw. Are there still chances to win? Of course there are, but it's right, we want to play objectively as well. That's really important. So, they might go here to defend. No. Okay, so now we can take the remaining pawn. And which pawn should we push? Doesn't matter. Okay. So there was a mistake made in the game, and I think it might have been related to how we played specifically in the opening. So I do want to check the lines here. Let's see. So we're doing okay here. Queen d7. Yeah, I think h4. Yeah, it doesn't like it. It's just a waste of time. Instead, we should play this a bit more aggressively. Another move I had in mind was something like d4 with the idea of knight e5. Here, d4 is good, but c4 is best. And the idea of c4 is if they try to go for this exchange, this is actually just extremely bad for them now because of knight e5. And if they try to keep in touch with the bishop somehow, like queen c8, then we enter a position like this where we get queen b3. And after queen b3, we're attacking b7, we're attacking d5. If they take, then we actually just take on b7 and defend our rook, prevent any queen g2. Maybe their best bet here is by playing queen g2. But queen g2, rook f1. And yeah, if they take, let's see here, queen b5 check is very disruptive because there's not actually a good way to prevent it. Because if they play c6 or knight c6, we can take on b7 because the queen would no longer be protecting b7. And if they play something like king d8, well, this is clearly not something they want to play, because we could take f7, but also because it ends in mate. So what else is there in the position to talk about here? So queen g2, rook f1 takes, queen b5 check. Yeah, no, I think that's it mainly. It's that whenever your opponent plays these types of ideas trying to go for one concept, we should really not be too concerned. And I gave them too much respect with a move like h4. This just says, hey, you developing pieces and me pushing pawns on the side of the board, it makes no sense, right? When we look at logical opening principles, we want to develop pieces and control the center. And h4 does none of that. It wastes a move. And all of a sudden, you can argue that maybe black is actually playing with the white pieces because white made no moves controlling the center for a move, and now it's black's turn. So this does put us at a bit of a disadvantage in the center, and it was totally unnecessary. And again, queen d7 is one of those threats that you see that, again, we actually just don't worry about. And one thing to mention is c4, what if they do take? I don't think we're worried here. We have knight e5. Knight e5 looks really good, followed by, if queen c8, then we at least have queen a4 check, picking up the pawn. Computer also says to just give it up, which makes complete sense as well. We can always take back with the knight. Like bishop e6, it's saying, and then like knight a3. The pawn's just going to be picked up in a move or two anyways, and the game will be over. So, not over actually, we'll just have like a slight edge, but a very good position. But we could see problems occurring, and yeah, I'm actually much worse here. I was really scared of e4, and I'm glad my opponent didn't play it. I was thinking of knight e1 here, but I was really scared of e3. And yeah, this is actually the best way to continue for both sides. This does not look pleasing because it does weaken our king in a big way. We can already see that if the pawn was on h2, it wouldn't be as bad because there'd be more defense of squares like g3. So we can see for many reasons why this h4 just doesn't really make sense in these types of positions where things aren't really defined yet. Luckily, they were playing a bit too aggressively here. So c takes d5, bishop takes g2. So I was actually thinking of taking c6, and yes, it is actually a mistake because there's a crazy variation here. Queen h3, knight h2, and knight g4. And surprisingly, there's not really a good way to like stop checkmate without just losing a mass amount of material. Like if we play knight to f3, then I think, can they not just take on f3? Oh, no, they don't take on f3. They just maintain everything. There's nothing we can do here. So they could just castle. Or even b takes c6, it says. Wow. Everything is just frozen. So queen a4, castles. Oh, knight takes h2 finally. Knight takes h2. And it's saying f5. We can't take on f1 yet because of queen takes c6, but let's just say castles. And I think they're going to take on f1 in a move or two, probably. This just looks like a disaster. So it's good that I avoided this because this is something to be genuinely concerned about. So I'm happy I didn't fall for that, taking on c6 here. And it seems like here we actually... Yeah, no, this is the correct way to play, but... Knight d4. Yeah, so I was considering e4, I think I mentioned, but I preferred e3, which doesn't look like it's that bad. Rest of the game looks pretty solid, and I think we played fine. So nothing really to analyze too in depth there. That wasn't covered during the game. So good one.